here you are, you're finding God, and I'm going, God, what are you doing? And this is the growing moment. You sit down for a minute and you don't just walk out there with your heart, and you think really long and hard about what your options are, and you keep fighting, and you keep fighting, and you keep fighting, and you keep fighting. You know, you come up with a plan and you work that plan until you're dead, or it succeeds, whichever comes first.
They said it was too late, that the best years were behind him. But he wasn't done. He was just getting dangerous. This podcast isn't for the overnight success stories. It's for the ones who are still in the middle of the damn fight. The late bloomers, the blue-collar visionaries, the people who refuse to settle. This isn't a comeback. It's a fucking uprising.
And welcome back to Electrician Entrepreneur podcast, documenting my journey as a 20-year vet in the electrical construction industry to a successful entrepreneur and business person. And now with the added bonus of my co-host, my beautiful co-host, Julie McCusker, my wife, who is also beginning her entrepreneurial journey. I should say you're well on your way.
Yeah.
So just to catch everybody up, first of all, this episode, we're going to talk about this past week, some of the philosophical breakthroughs that I've had, your tangible, real world, hard things, right? And we're going to kind of show that transformation isn't a solo flight. It's a team sport played in the mud of daily life. Stop that. Oops. I don't want to write. So at any rate, excuse me. So just to kind of, as I like to do on every episode, as we're still relatively unknown, just to kind of explain where we're at or why we're doing this, what this podcast is about, aside from just the general information that I gave. The podcast was born out of an idea that we always see successful entrepreneurs after they become successful. And, you know, everybody talks about the hardships and everything that come along with becoming a successful entrepreneur, but nobody really you don't get to see it. And so the idea was really kind of born because eventually I want to get to that point when when I become successful, and my plan is to try to also be one of those successful entrepreneurs that tries to bring others up and become successful themselves. And so the idea was born that I need to document my journey, from that idea that I need to document my journey, which, you know, traditionally is a lot of journaling and stuff like that. But, you know, what nobody's ever done is actually documented the journey. Like, this is where I'm sitting. This is how things look on a day-to-day basis, or, you know, in my life currently. So, you know, of course, podcasts being the most popular medium of entertainment these days, making its way to the most popular medium, entertainment medium, it only made sense that we do this almost as, you know, like a discovery, what do you call reality TV kind of deal. However, we can't just have camera people running around the house all day, every day. Although we did toy with that idea. I thought, you know, hey, maybe, you know, if I pitch this to Discovery, maybe they pick it up. I don't see cable television lasting for too much longer, though. I mean, streaming is the way to go now. And people are not going to stream. I don't think people would stream this sort of thing. And welcome to my basement on a Saturday afternoon. So so that's the idea. And then, of course, Julie, my beautiful wife,
Hi.
has joined me, and this was born out of I had a desire, of course, to have a co-host um, all along. So after I think 13 episodes, I think I fell apart after 13. Lucky 13.
Mm.
Any rate, so after 13 episodes being solo and just being a talking head, and I think part of the problem that I had with being solo, well, if you have somebody along the ride with you, you kind of have a commitment to somebody. You do it. You don't just do it just because. You're doing it because you need to satisfy somebody else's desire to do it. So and we kind of do that for each other now.
Right.
But the idea of revitalizing the show after a 6-month hiatus was, started with our son, and a conversation I had with him. He was stuck in the doldrums after dropping out of school, which he intends to go back, but he's got he's got some work to do that. So to try to help, and if you could breathe away from the microphone, it's all right. But at any rate, to try to help get him out of those doldrums and get him active again and everything else like that, I asked him to produce the show, and I thought that it would be as we were going over it, I thought it might be a great idea to have him also on the show as my co-host. And the reason for that is primarily for him, it would be something of interest, something that he could, really wrap his or get himself wrapped around, and get into. However, is a very private person. So while he seemed initially like this was something that he would be interested in doing, ultimately, he didn't want to do it. And while I never really considered you as a co-host, it was, and not to shortchange you, but it was, you were never interested, or you never seemed interested, I should say. You don't seem, you're not typically the type of person that wants your stuff out there for the entire internet to know about, right?
Right.
So really, it really wasn't even, they hadn't even crossed my mind. So when you turned me down, you immediately piped up with, well, why don't I do it? And it was like, well, I mean, it just makes sense. And that was just as you were really kind of just starting to formulate becoming an entrepreneur on your own. And just to define what we mean by entrepreneur, so the definition of an entrepreneur is a business owner. You're a founder of a business, or you acquire a business. I mean, that's the basic level of entrepreneur. Typically, what people think of as in terms of entrepreneurs is somebody who buys and sells businesses, and and is big in philanthropy and all these
Right.
other things. But the reality is that an entrepreneur is at its most basic level is a business owner. So at any rate, so this week we wanted to kind of get into, did I already read the summary? No. So this week, The Weight of the New is our episode title. And we're pairing we're pairing my philosophical breakthroughs with your tangible, real world hard things to show the transformation. That transformation isn't a solo flight; it's a team sport played in the mud of daily life. And so we're going to go ahead and kind of get started here. And the identity shift is the first thing that that our show notes wants us to talk about. But if I could detract from that for just a little bit to deal with some of the things that we have been dealing with, one of the biggest, I mean, there's a few really, really big challenges to making this big shift from just being an average person. an average W-2 employee to becoming, somebody that's a mover, a shaker, a freaking, somebody that's creating and somebody that's doing something of significance. Not to say that, being a W-2 employee is fine. There's a level of comfort there that you never have to progress beyond. That's fine if that's what you want, if that's what you really, really want. If you find yourself miserable, right? If you find yourself constantly questioning what else you can do to elevate yourself beyond your station in life, then chances are you need to break out of that W-2 and do something of real significance. Historically speaking, there's always been a level there's always been a level of independence to everyone's lives, right? Yeah. I mean, I want to, in comparison to, say, a global society. Now, what we have today is we have we're global. Right. In a matter of seconds, I can know what's going on in Japan. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In a matter of seconds, somebody in Australia can know exactly what's going on with me. And so we're a global society now. We're no longer, we're no longer these individual cultures. We're a global culture. And, it's still, there's still a lot that needs to be, worked out with that. And I'm not purporting by any means that we need to adapt to some sort of global, what is it? What's the term I'm looking for? We don't need to globalize our governments, and
right.
I don't believe that that's going to work. There's just too many differences in various cultures around the world. But with modern society, we have adapted a global culture. That's all I'm saying from a philosophical level. This is a relatively new thing. I mean, that's something that we've really only kind of been dealing with for the last 25, 30 years. Prior to that, we were on our way, I suppose, to be global, but the flow of information wasn't so fast that you literally, that you have a next door neighbor who's adapting to Japanese culture.
Right.
And I mean, this massive shift in the speed in which we learn things and we absorb what's going on in the world, of course, is making a significant change in our culture. So that's hence global culture. But, prior to 25 years ago, we had this 100-year-old culture, which is the industrial culture. That is to say, we now belong to corporations. The W-2 employee was, everybody planned their lives around being a W-2 employee, and which is a big reason why you would only, why people tend to reference the 1%, the richest of the rich, because very seldom do people go out of their way to create these, these massive empires that this 1% has created. And then it's referenced as 2% for the most successful people. And once again, it's like, for 100 years, we were not being conditioned or conditioning ourselves to be within that 2% that actually is making this massive, or is that determined to be of any significance to the world. And it was kind of a go along, get along culture. Mm-hmm. You're born and raised into this premise that you should, that you're gonna work real hard, put your nose down, and work real hard, And, and what you're working for is a retirement. And that's essentially what it was, some hope of having a retirement in which you're still capable of doing things.
Yep.
You can get out and see the world. You've got, a good family that loves you and consistently. I mean, this was the American dream, right?
Right.
And the American dream was entirely based around this idea that and the mom and pops and everything that did survive through most of the 20th century eventually were bought up by and so that was the last of the independence that I'm kind of getting at, that we've always had historically. We've always had this level of independence because you would have you'd have your farmers, you'd have your ranchers, you'd have your you'd have your blacksmiths. Everybody had a profession within their little individual community,
Right.
that ultimately gave them a level of independence from anybody else. And then we enter the corporate world. We enter into the corporate world within the 20th century, where we have, assembly lines and so on and so forth. And you belong. So then you are under the direct control of some middle manager, and who is under the direct control of some regional manager, who's under the direct control of, and so on and so forth. And then you have somebody at the very top who's got this vision and set, this is here are the rules that the companies, and you belong to them. Because, you're looking for stability. You're looking to make sure that you have a positive income all the time. And you can't really go back to that independence in this type of culture, because it's almost impossible. I mean, it's prohibitively difficult.
Yeah.
To be a farmer today is there's entire giant portions of the farming industry that belong to corporations.
Yeah, that's true.
So all of that independence is gone that we have always had. You had the individual, that was his role within the community, and he decided when things were going to happen, and so on and so forth. And of course, to some degree, a lot of that independence or freedom was, also very much dictated by whatever government that may be ruling over that particular community. But ultimately, regardless of whatever that is, there was a level of independence that you just didn't have for the last 150 years.
Right.
And so, what we're seeing today is a massive shift back to that. And so this is where we have the split in personality, where I was talking about before, where you've got the person who's perfectly content with their W-2, and that's fine. That's great. If that's all if you just want to make it to retirement, if you're not feeling like something's just screaming to get out, then you do, please keep doing it. So long as you find some level of peace and contentment within your life, you're not going to be 90 years old or on your deathbed someday going, wow, I should have done this.
Yeah.
So, and that's something that worth really kind of paying attention to. On the flip side, and I think that you're seeing a lot more of this today, because this era of, corporate worlds is kind of coming to an end. I think a lot more people, especially the younger generations, who are, disenfranchised from the college education, working for the corporate world, because jobs are being, AI is taking over jobs. Massive corporations are laying people off left and right. then you have the economy forcing corporations to lay people off. And so your job market is freaking turning into a shit show, and has been for the last few years. And so, this is leaving a lot of the younger generations feeling very disenfranchised and looking for the next thing. And then you enter into the whole equation, the global culture, and what's, Gary Vaynerchuk has been freaking touting this for the last few years, is like, social media is your big win. Get out there and be a creator, just talk about the things, he said something along the lines, I can't remember exactly what it was, but if you're into Smurfs, then fucking Smurf it up. I think that was the exact quote.
Yeah.
And is, that's what the world is, what this global culture has become. Now that's going to fade, and he's already talking about that. The same guy that predicted the era of the creator is now predicting that that's all going away. Now it's going to be a lot more focus based. He's saying, you really need to kind of show an entire world of of who you are.
Yeah.
And be more, I'm sorry, not focus based, more broad based. And what's really going to happen from that, in my opinion, is people are going to, of course, begin to get out there. And actually, you see a lot of this on YouTube. A lot of creators now are creating in the sense of how to create, coaching the up and comers on how to become creators themselves. So on top of being a creator, they're also teaching how to be a creator. And this is creating this whole big cycle of, attention whores.
Yeah.
For the lack of a better word. And, and here we are.
Yeah. Hi.
Here we are, whoring it up. And, but the thing is that this goes somewhere. I mean, every big trend has an ultimate payday, right? That help me out. Amorphizes? Is that right? No.
That's not a word.
That's not a word. English by Liam and Julie McCusker. It you know what I'm trying to say, don't you? It transforms.
Okay.
Every big trend eventually transforms into something. And sometimes there's some really big meaningful things out of this. And right now, I think the big meaningful thing that's coming out of the creator era, of course, is a lot more people understanding the necessity of going into business for themselves, bringing back this independent level of, here's a product I have that I'm willing to sell. And in a lot of cases, it really it's the product is themselves, such as what I'm doing, right? I'm going to be selling what I know up here and the philosophies that I have. And the hope is that, that I transform, maybe transform an industry, or maybe transform a bunch of people's lives for the better. And this course, part of all of this was coming to the understanding that realistically, the entire premise here is just growth. It's the journey of becoming better and better and better myself, and in doing so, bringing people along for the sake of bettering themselves. At any rate, so now that I've rambled on that for 25 minutes, we basically the whole idea here is that it's a very difficult journey. Typically people that don't go through all the things that we're going through don't last. The people that become successful but they took a shortcut to that success in some way. They don't suffer the big pitfalls and all that other the financial drama, the freaking relationship drama, everything that happens with making this transformation. People who shortchange that eventually end up losing their position within success. This is something that's been documented several times. John Maxwell talks about it in his books. And in case you're not aware, John Maxwell is somebody that John Maxwell is somebody that I really kind of look up to in terms of his philosophies on leadership and personal growth and so on. And now I've gotten you hooked on him as well, because he frames everything in a way that just makes sense. But his ideas aren't new. I mean, Napoleon Hill, who's probably the most famous of all the 20th century success gurus. I don't know what else to call him, but I mean, he was just a writer, and he was probably the first guy that said, let me go and build these relationships with these most successful people, so that I can document how they became so successful. What are they thinking? What are their habits? How did they get to where they got? And that's the premise behind all of his writing. But all of his stuff is all of the stuff that you hear from Maxwell starts. You can trace it back to Hill, and it's a lot like I say. There's something very similar going on with with that entire world that I see in religion as well. I mean, you can look at anything within Christianity and find tons of similarities to Buddhism and Taoism and the Quran and of course Christianity and Judaism are like they're distant cousins. So you know what I mean? Sort of, right?
Sort of.
I mean, well, so the what's the word I'm looking for? The Jewish religion is based a lot on the Old Testament.
Correct.
So this is where I'm saying there's they're sort of like distant cousins, because a lot of Christianity is based on the Old Testament, but we have the New Testament to go with it, which of course Judea doesn't.
Correct.
Right. So you see where I'm going with that. So there is some similarities there, but you can find, all these similarities throughout all religions. They're all basically I mean, you can even look at the, at some of some more paganistic stuff and see similarities to Christianity. You can look at more Native American stuff and find similarities to Buddha and so on and so forth. So that's my point. There's a lot of similarities. You could almost, if you were a theologian, you can almost pick and choose from all of them and put together a whole new thing that's like the best of the best.
Right.
Right. And I think you can do that as a life coach or as a success coach or whatever. You can do the same thing. You can look at all these guys. And so I tried to read Napoleon Hill. It's very dry and I don't know. It's not easy for me to read. My attention span not being that fantastic, it's difficult. Have you tried?
I have not.
Oh, give it a shot. You're going to be like, Whereas Maxwell talks more like he speaks,
Right.
and which is he speaks like grandpa.
Yeah.
Is like he speaks with a level of you get the sense of level of the caring. And, I mean, he sounds genuinely like he cares about everyone's success. Like he would love to see you elevate beyond your station. He's also, in his writing, he's also realistic. Not everybody is going to make that journey. And, but at any rate, again, rambling on for first portion of this show. You haven't really said much of anything.
Well, you keep talking.
I know. You know, we talked about this. You're supposed to shut me up whenever you want to say something.
All right.
But at any rate, all right. So I'll wrap this up. This particular topic. The premise here, the idea here is that it's okay that if you don't want to elevate, but I think we're seeing more and more today, more people going back to that level of independence that society had prior to the Industrial Revolution, where ultimately on your day-to-day basis, you were in charge of everything you did. Nobody was kind of sitting over your shoulder saying you're not producing enough. And that's what the corporate world is a constant somebody looking over your shoulder saying you're not doing enough. So this level of independence, this level of deciding, you know, I'm not going to work today and not worry about being fired, you know, and all that, I think it is really, I mean, this is the crux of this disenchantment from the younger generations. You know, it's like, I don't want somebody constantly hovering over me, giving me performance reviews.
Right.
I don't want to feel like, you know, at any given moment, for no reason whatsoever, I could find myself, you know, wondering what I'm going to do now and what the next step is. And, you know, and we're learning, I think that, you know, the younger generations are learning a lot faster than we are. Of course, we're late to the game,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Which is generational. You know, I think the millennials are we're a lot quicker to the game than the Gen X. I think typically Gen X is kind of following in the footsteps more of the baby boomers. Whereas, like, you know, well, I'm looking for something safe, stability, you know, and, you know, being an entrepreneur is not stable. You know, you could
Right.
lose everything tomorrow. So there is a level of fear that goes with being an entrepreneur. And, you know, but what separates the entrepreneur from the W-2 is the entrepreneur is well prepared for that, for facing that fear on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. This is what we work the hardest at, really, is facing our fears. I mean, you think about it, every day there's something that scares the shit out of you, you know, and it's like, so how do we deal with this? Well, we face it head on. We examine it by, you know, in every aspect, and then we come up with a way to get through it. And so this is the new norm, is heading back towards that level of independence, which means not knowing what, you know, something could happen tonight that could just change the whole direction of everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so we're prepared to deal with that now. I mean, we're preparing for it. Younger generation is a lot more, I mean, they weren't educated to deal with it. So that's really a big, right?
Right.
But this global culture that we have is better preparing them for such events as becoming entrepreneurs than anything public education certainly will give them.
Right.
And even at the university level, we're not seeing people come out of college going, I'm going to jump into a business for myself. You've got teenagers that, you know, as young as 12, 13, 14 years old that are online selling shit.
Yep. Or they're influencers.
And they're making a killing. You know, and this is something, I mean, yeah, certainly we had, you know, our generation, you know, there were plenty of people that, you know, went and they'd go wash cars, you know, every Saturday and during their summer vacation, or they'd go mow lawns every day. And, you know, I mean, there were people that were that motivated in our generation. I'm not saying that there weren't, but today is like, you know, I'm aiming for the fucking stars and I'm 13.
Yeah.
You know, back then it was, well, I want to have a good work ethic, and I want to freaking, I want a car. I want,
Right.
I mean, I'm working towards something, not looking for independence. You know, that was never the thing. So at any rate, this, all of this being said, we'll move on.
Okay.
This new world, this of entrepreneurship, success, and so on. This is, of course, this is giving us the we now have to embrace the courage to evolve, as it were, and from and this is the identity shift here is from doing the work to empowering the worker, which is, ultimately is my goal is to go from being the worker to empowering the worker. I'm now on a journey that will never end until I take my last breath of constant growth and perfecting myself a little bit more every day. And with that said, I have some really great news for my podcast audience. The book is done.
All right.
The book is now sitting on my computer waiting to be shipped out. The only thing missing from the book is the 12 names in the acknowledgement section for the founding dozen, which would be the pre-ordering dozen that buys the system, joins the community, and so on. This is great news because it's a massive milestone. The book is finally done, right?
Yeah.
Ready to be shipped. I also need the ISBNs and I need the copyright, which is why nobody's seeing any of it because I don't have a copyright on it yet. But nonetheless, aside from those small little hurdles, it's done and it's huge. This enters me into a new phase, which is to actually freaking market the fucking thing properly. All I've been doing is posting articles and posts to my LinkedIn profile or LinkedIn page. And that really only makes it to all of 49 or 50 people. And none of them are contractors. So, some of them are in the business, but they're probably not contractors. For those that actually that may be in the business, this would be of interest to you, this book. Because it's the idea here this isn't just for contractors. This is for the people they employ too. This is to kind of say, we need to change the way we look at how we do business. And that's from the, from the guy who's just, running the pipe and teaching an apprentice to do so, all the way to the owner, and give the owner a final chance to say, I don't need to have my hand in every freaking pie for this business to be successful. And so whatever level somebody's at within the industry, this book is going to be useful. And it also should allow you to be able to have that conversation with the contractor, the owner, and say, hey, look, I read this book. It talks about these systems. I think it's something that you really need, we really need to consider with this company in order for the company to grow. Now, that's not to say that every owner wants to grow their business, but nonetheless, the future of business, of contracting, really kind of depends on that shift. And something for another episode. That's I went on a rant 2:30 this morning. right?
Mm-hmm.
You want
Yeah.
you want to talk about that rant?
No.
No. But I was going to write an article last night. I couldn't sleep, so I was going to write an article and just to explain it real quick. And so here I am down in the basement, and I'm smoking, and I'm drinking some coffee. I just decided, fuck it. I'm going to stay up all night. I'm going to write this article. I'm going to, I was going to do some outreach and all this stuff. And Julie woke up and made the mistake of coming down here. Would that be accurate to say it was a mistake?
Yes.
So in the midst of my freaking fury, or I shouldn't say fury, the whirlwind that was my actions at that time, you walked in and got the full smack in the face of everything that's keeping me up.
Yeah.
And which is very specifically about how the contracting world is going to massively change in the next, and I'm saying it, I'm it's not just me saying it, but in the next 5 years, everything in construction is going to be different. And within the next 10 years, you're not, if you were to you'll go from today to 10 years from now, you travel through time to 10 years from now, you wouldn't understand a fucking thing about why people are doing what they're doing, because it's going to change that drastically. And it's not specifically because of AI. That's the big point.
Yeah.
At any rate, so moving on, that's a topic for another day. I think it's worth discussing, though. I think it's definitely something that should be, and it would be good to get some, it would be really good to get some people, some experts to talk about that with. But also in that, I was, I'm looking to make some outreach. I've had enough of trying to figure everything out on my own. I need real fucking solid mentorship. And so I'm beginning to consider reaching out to people as well. At the same time that's happened, you want to step in here?
So our boy, who I will refer to as LB, because his name is also Liam.
That's not what LB stands for, though.
No, it's not. He got a job finally. We're very excited about that. It's part-time, but it's like 30 hours, so it's nothing to sneeze at. He's
is it 30?
Yeah.
So now he can pay for my retirement.
I don't know about that. But and he likes it so far, and we've discussed his making contribution to the household in terms of paying a part of the phone bill. He and I share a phone bill, cell phone bill.
Really just talking about him kind of paying his way.
Right. And paying for his health insurance.
Which, it still leaves him a decent amount of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's not outrageous. It's like $200 a month.
We're not asking for rent. We're not asking, yeah.
No. So I think this is really good for him. Gets out of the house every day and, talks to other actual human beings in person. And I'm very happy about it.
So, how do we let go of being the provider to become the guide?
I struggle with that a lot because in my mind, as a mom, he's still 6 years old and, needs me for everything, just about.
10 years old, high stepping it down to first base.
So I really struggle with letting go. For instance, he purchased himself. This was a couple of years ago, but he purchased himself a bag of Jolly Ranchers, and I told him, "Be careful with those." And he looked at me like I had a screw loose. Like, really, Mom?
Time to let go.
And so yeah, that's the position I'm in. Whereas Liam is like, do what you want.
So let me ask you now. See, from where I sit, I see things like this as an opportunity to, sort of, what's the word I want to use? Guinea pig. Okay, so as entrepreneurs, we're essentially leaders,
Mm-hmm.
right? And leadership is something. So this is a very important thing that we've been spending a lot of time learning about. How we go transition from being led to being leaders. And so now we've got that particular scenario kind of really happening under our own roof. And so that's the opportunity I see is like, well, I have a chance to really become a leader. And so for the audience to understand what I mean by becoming a leader, I'm not talking about, you need to do this, you need to do that. That's not what a leader does. The leader says, okay, so what do you need in order for you to make this progression to the next step? And how can I help you do that? I'm a leader pushes somebody not to produce, but to become better at what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about numbers. It's not about becoming, about getting so much stuff or doing so much stuff or whatever. It's all about how do you become, so, how can I help you to grow beyond your current status? And, and so, I mean, typically when we think of leaders, we think of politicians and we think of generals on a battlefield.
Yeah.
So we'll look at this we can't look at this from politicians because politicians are all corrupt. I mean,
Yeah.
the ones that are not don't last long. So so from the perspective of somebody, from a leader on a battlefield, the idea is what do I need to do to provide you with what you need to do to go into battle? So you got to provide them with the weapons, with the armor, with the support. Okay, so I got to call in air support. I got to, whatever it is you need to do to keep your forces, to keep the people that you're leading moving forward. And the best leaders on the battlefield are always the guys that go in front of the army, that essentially lead the army into battle. Right. And so I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn how to be successful leaders instead of saying, okay, so you should be careful with your Jolly Ranchers.
Right.
Okay, so now you've got the job. What's the next thing that I can help you do? Are you considering the next step? What do you think the next step is? Where do you see this going? How do you see? I mean, are you processing any of this as now that he's a week in?
Right.
Is this starting to kind of become processed, or is this conversation happening? It's probably not happening yet.
Not really. I mean, in terms of the job, I gave him tips on working,
how to whore himself out to customers.
Yeah, how to get tips. But we haven't really talked about, how.
So what the next
steps and things like that.
Because I mean, what we have is a sort of half-assed plan, right? So that this was originally born from, he came home from school. He's not going back to school. And all right, so what do you want to do then? And well, I want to go back to school. Okay. How are you going to do that? You know, this is what I, you know, so I laid it out. This is what I suggest you do. And I think that more or less became the half-ass plan. Get on the phone, get in touch with, the community college, figure out, how many courses you need. I think we already figured it out, but
Yeah.
You get some more courses. So that this idea, get yourself a part-time job and get to work. And freaking build up that money so that you can freaking go to school. And the nice thing in Massachusetts, community college is free. You still have to apply for the loans and everything, and then and then go to the state or whatever admissions office from there and say, okay, so I went through the process of trying to get the money. Now, cover the cost. And so community college ultimately can be free. It's just a process to do it.
Right.
Nonetheless, this is part of the plan, but you need a fucking job. And on top of that, guess what? The biggest thing that's going to happen is if he doesn't have this plan in action within 6 months of his last class, right?
Right.
Then he's got to start paying back that fucking loan.
Absolutely.
Which is now up to what, 120,000?
Not that much.
No, still, that's a fucking huge chunk of change.
Yep.
That's what we have left on our mortgage, isn't it?
Just about. Well, a little more, but yeah.
So it's a big fucking to do. And that's that's his generation's biggest fucking problem today. I finished college and now I can't afford to pay it back. And so, we've got freaking Bidens of the world fucking saying, all right, well, the government's going to pay for it. But guess what? The fucking Trumps of the world are saying, no, we're not. So what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And so what do you do with this? Do you just kind of throw your hands up and say, well, let the government throw me away? You can't.
No.
You can't. It's just not feasible. So the question then becomes, what are you going to do about it? And this is where our leadership can really, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I have a hard time.
Yeah.
But you're right. We need to guide him and not
right
do it for him.
And we can't be, it's also not about orders. It's like, so
right.
Where are you today? How are you feeling? Are you ready to tackle the next thing? Because, and we got, there's got to be a constant reminder too. It's like similar issues that I'm currently trying to work through. Excuse me. Similar issues that I'm trying to work through very much is about reminders that, money is spoken for before we have it.
Right.
And it's very easy to forget that sometimes and say, well, you know what? I deserve this. And in some cases, maybe that's the truth. Not going to doubt that. However, just as a side note, this is a really funny podcast of just two people coughing for 2 hours.
Yeah.
but at any rate, and we're going to be doing this podcast for the same amount of people, same audience in 5 years, and we're both going to have oxygen tanks.
Yeah.
And we're right.
God, I hope not.
No. But at any rate, so realistically it's all a matter of in relation to leading the conversation. It's just a conversation. It's a conversation that holds him accountable. So now you've got this money coming in. What's the money going to do? What are you going to do with that money? Because it can't just simply buy whatever you think of in any moment.
Right.
You can't just suddenly say, well, you know what, I'm going out with my friends that I haven't seen in a few weeks and I have $400. Guess I'm going to have a fucking great time.
Right.
No, that $400 is supposed to do something, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, just because it's sitting in your bank account waiting to be used doesn't mean that it's available. And I think that's the hardest thing for anybody, any adult to learn, right?
Oh yeah. I struggle with that now.
Yeah. I know. But so do I. You're not alone. It's actually, so they say 70% of all Americans have this problem. And I think that's the number. I don't remember. I heard this on a freaking, a podcast short that I saw online. But an expert said, I mean, actually, he's an immigrant, a sheik, but he's like, the studies show 70% of all Americans are ready, don't have real plans for their money. And, and we're all impulse buyers. And this is the culture that we've developed over the last 100 years is to, we're going to go to work every day for the same guy. We're going to, and become slaves to that W-2. And then when we get paid, we're going to run out and we're going to buy the shiny new object that we see on the end of the aisle.
Yeah.
And, and it's, so it's difficult because we have to break that now. I mean, especially 51, this is the difficult thing to break, the difficult habit to break, to be very intentional about every dollar that comes in. I think I've done a pretty good job myself of being a lot more mindful of what's happening with my money. That doesn't mean that I don't talk myself into stupid decisions in regards to money. But nonetheless, most of my money, I think that I've spent frivolously, and I say frivolously with a grain of salt, because it hasn't been really frivolously, but most of that money that I spent in the last year and a half has all been about trying to build a business. So, I'll spend money on this thing thinking that's going to help me. And then I'll spend money on that thing thinking, there still needs to be a real plan. And so I can say, yeah, it's all been for the business, but in reality, without the plan, it's fucking useless and it's a waste.
Right.
So, but at any rate, so that's one thing that needs to be we need to hold him accountable for, and, is making sure that he keeps, that he has a real good idea what he's going to do with that stuff. That he understands the importance of planning it out, that he understands the importance of planning his next few steps. And it's a great opportunity, since it's so very important to us to learn this ourselves now, is to begin to understand goals and milestones and the journey, and this whole process which we're going through, which is not something you develop just because you're going to be an entrepreneur, by the way. That's the mindset necessary for peace and contentment. You need to set goals. You need to, celebrate your milestones, and all that stuff, and continuously push yourself to grow beyond your capacity. The flip side is, in regards to, being an entrepreneur or not, is that, that growth doesn't necessarily mean that you become a millionaire.
Right.
And that's all that really means. But at any rate, I think that, I think that that's, one thing that really, I haven't been paying attention. So, yeah, wow. I don't know if we're going to make it through all 5 topics. But at any rate, so I guess, this transitions us to this the next thing, which is the Gethsemane
Yes.
moment. I don't know why I can't seem to get that pronunciation down. The Gethsemane moment, when faith and business require public courage. Now, this is actually what a train wreck of a segue.
Yeah.
This has, but it does have something to do with leadership. So now, what brought you to this moment? So that you've now decided, and this is in relation to your spiritual side.
Yeah.
You've decided that you're going to go public with your faith despite fearing judgment.
I don't really fear judgment.
Okay, is that just an AI thing?
I guess so. Quick story. I was raised Catholic, and I made my confirmation at 15, 16, when you usually do, and to satisfy my mother. And I left the church after that. And I lived as an atheist for an agnostic, then kind of morphed into atheism for 30 years.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
And as I said last week, a couple of years ago, I lost my dad, and I was kind of lost. And a friend of mine encouraged me to go to her church. And after some hemming and hawing, and I don't know, I did go. And it kind of changed me. Are you all right?
I have a bony butt, and these stools suck.
So recently, after the Easter holiday,
Mm-hmm.
The
camera's on you.
After the Easter holiday, I went to Easter service, and it had a profound effect on how I looked at Easter itself, the meaning behind it, and the brutal sacrifice that Christ made for all of us. Now, if you're not a Christian, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But it really, Jesus.
Just keep
It
talking.
really, oh my God, you're going to knock the whole thing over. So anyway, that had a really deep, meaningful impact on me. And I decided that I wanted to be baptized or rebaptized into this church. So that's actually happening on April 26th. And it's really hard to do this when you're distracting me. Where am I? Oh, so, yeah, so in terms of judgment, I don't fear judgment. I'm going to be amongst my peers. It's not like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be walking around with a sign that says, hey, I was just baptized. That would be weird.
Like I voted today kind of
Exactly.
sticker.
So that's basically my story concerning that. And for those of you who are non-Christians or just don't know, as I pointed out last week, Gethsemane is the garden in which Christ was betrayed by Judas. And it started the road to his crucifixion.
So that's an interesting point, because this whole thing coincided with yet another dark day in my journey.
Okay.
So the betrayal, as it were, right? So while you're embracing God, what essentially what happened for me was is that I found myself unable to sleep. And well, I actually, let me go a step back. I was having a very difficult time at work. Um, as you get older and you're a hands-on guy, um, especially if you were very physical through your early career, and you weren't taking the necessary precautions like all the old timers told you, which is very common. Nobody likes to listen to the advice from the old timers. Don't tell me to slow down. I'll be fine. And after 20 years, I'm not fine. Welcome to Chicopee. At any rate, so and so working with my hands don't work very well anymore. And so working with small parts doesn't work very well anymore. In addition to that, my time off because of my neck, which is another problem that comes up from all of this, my neck. But my time off has also left me out of shape. In addition to that, I don't practice with this stuff every day like I used to. I certainly don't work with rigid conduit very often. And I was working with rigid conduit, and I was planning a relatively simple job, but in a complex way. And it was just everything had been fighting me from the moment I started the job, which was on Thursday, and now we're into Wednesday, and I'm still not freaking getting done. And I think it was Tuesday night actually. So my return, we had a 4-day weekend, and so Tuesday I come back to work, and it just nothing worked out, and I finished the night going, I don't, what the fuck, I once upon a time I was a really good electrician, and now I don't feel like I'm that I'm a good electrician anymore. And it's not because I don't know what I'm doing. It's That's the way I want to go. Yeah. It's not that I don't know what I'm doing. It's that for some reason it's not coming to me as easy. So I see something, I already have it formulated exactly how to do it, and then when I go to do it, it's just not coming together the way I had already formulated it. And then mistakes start happening, and when you begin to get frustrated, it doesn't matter how good you are, you ever get frustrated and things just don't work very well. And so this culminated in me ending my shift, and really frustrated, really beating myself up. How can I have gone such a far fall from the perch I'd put myself on before, to this, to whatever this is, you know and while it should have reaffirmed my decision to get out of the trade, or at least step away from the trade, it instead turned into this whole fire, a fire and brimstone on my life. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at is then I get home and I go to bed, and after I think I fell asleep for maybe half an hour, and I was awake, wide awake, and could not sleep. And I'm staring at the door. I'm staring, and I'm unable. And all I'm doing is just playing all this shit in my head. Everything. I'm doubting everything I'm doing. I'm doubting everything that I used to do. So the career that I once was very good at is gone, and the new career isn't going to happen. And and what is, and it was very, very, very dark night for me. And so the next day wasn't any really, I mean, I didn't start, and so here you are, you're finding God, and I'm going, God, what are you doing? And so I think that, so while we're on this subject of finding God and faith, and the importance of this. Faith, by definition, means having an understanding that things are going to work out. No matter how it seems, they're going to work out. To having it's trust, trusting that the outcome is going to be beneficial.
Right.
And in this moment, I was literally saying, so, I mean, the big question is, it has become a relatively popular thing, but you ask God for courage and he gives you a bunch of things, a bunch of your fears to get over so you can become courageous. You ask to be strong and he gives you mountains to move so you can become strong, and and so on and so forth. And and the one thing that I've always heard throughout my whole life when it comes to some type of Christian belief was that God never gives you more than you can handle. And so you're finding God and you're celebrating God, and you're like, and I'm going, God, I think that you think I'm stronger than I am. And I mean, this is literally Jesus on the cross, is it not?
Yeah.
How can I mean, he questioned God.
Yeah.
And, and so this is, I mean, so here I am in that same scenario, which, by the way, this is a completely separate thought. There is I wish I got to look it up. I got to try and find it again because I don't remember the specifics, but there's a series of books on the various different apostles that is aimed towards mental health.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the idea being is that, you can, out of all the apostles, you can more than likely associate yourself to one or two of them. And through reading through their stories, begin to understand how you yourself can make it through whatever difficulties you're going through. And so, which I think is a fantastic thing, especially if you're, really into your faith. But at any rate, so this was, I think that the reason why this is kind of paired together, I think these two conversations is because, while you're lifting yourself up, I'm literally going, I can't do it. I don't think I can continue. And I literally, I was very, very, very low. You remember last week me talking about how I did a video before. I just watched that back, early, before we did started tonight's episode. But I had done a video where I was just at my lowest, and I recorded that video specifically to document, okay, here's my lowest. And you say I can't go any lower, and you're challenging God.
Yeah.
It can't get worse than now. It can never get any worse than it is right now. And I guarantee you it's going to get fucking worse. And 90% of the time it's worse in your head. It's not worse. The world doesn't give a fuck about you. Nature doesn't give a fuck about you. The rest of the people don't give a fuck. It's 90% in your head. Nobody's out to get you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And God's just saying, hey, look, I'm here to help you when you're ready. So, so it's a very interesting, I think, pairing between the two different situations. I'm excited for you. So I'm not exactly a Christian, right? I believe in God, but I have a different take on it all. I touched on this earlier, and I've touched on this a few times in the past, on the episode, on the podcast. But, I view, I don't view, well, religion, first of all, is an organized spiritual system, right? So I don't believe in religion, because I think it's too, I think that it can be a little too much, and it leaves way too much up for the interpretation of people that we elevate into these leadership positions, and not everybody in a leadership position is a leader.
Right.
So, and I think this is the problem that we have historically with the Vatican. I mean, maybe that's not the case for the last 50 years. I don't follow it enough to say. Certainly it is. In throughout Christianity and Catholicism, it is the central hub to all that there is behind Christianity. But you know, historically, the Vatican's been been a massive negative influence on the world. And so this is why I always like to, there's so much out of the movie Kingdom of Heaven that I can't, whenever I think of anything spiritual, I keep going back to that. And one of my favorite scenes is when I don't remember the guy's name, but he's spiritual advisor to our to the main to I don't remember his name. I don't remember their names now. But at any rate, the spiritual guy is marching off to war, and he says, "I'm going with my order." And he says, "But you're going to die." And he says, "Well, all death is certain." But the thing that he there's some. Oh no, actually, there are two different situations. That was a good one. All death is certain. He goes with his order. This is part of his faith. But earlier in the movie, he says, I can't remember his name. I almost had it. But that Balian says, he asked Balian how he comes to find Jerusalem, and he responds that, I think it seems that I have lost my religion, is what he said. And this advisor says, "I take no stock in religion. What is right and what God wants is here, and what you do every day." And that remark makes me emotional, because I think that is the reality of faith. And so I don't paint this picture of this higher being that looks like us. I think of this higher being really in the sense of everything, So that's my spiritual take on it. But again, going back to what I was hinting at earlier, and many times in the past, is that there are all these similarities from everything. So I don't take one; I take the best of everything. That's the way I view it, anyway.
Yeah.
Not to say that there isn't plenty of stuff that I would love to learn from the Bible, and I would love to sit down with your pastor and have him, or sit and even go and just listen, because those stories, while they may be directed in some sort of interpretation that he may be portraying, still may be very valuable to my own situation in some way. And certainly I can open up the book and read these stories myself, right? And there's a lot of benefit to that. So I think that I think all of that, and that actually makes for a great transition. I did find my way through the Dark Night and through that next day. And just to sum it all up, really, I mean, I went and sat down with my therapist Thursday. So the whole week has not been going well. Just really not in a very good place personally. And I feel a big weight, constant big weight. And my therapist, basically said what Mind Sarah says, And, you know, you even said this is like, I'm trying, you know, I'm carrying too much and I'm not giving myself a benefit of the doubt for that. It's very easy. And I think this is, you know, for me, this is the absolute truth of it all, is that I expect the best. I expect myself to perform at a level. I expect myself to get just so much done.
Yep.
I expect myself to, you know, to find a level of excellence beyond, you know, just the norm. I have a level of expectations. And when when that level of expectations has not been met with anything that I'm doing, I don't need a drill sergeant. Maybe this is because I didn't have a father figure. I had to be my own. That I grew this mentality that, you know, well, you're not doing enough. You're not doing it. You're performing a subpar level. You need to be better. You need to be stronger. You need to be faster. You need to be, you know, more awake. You need to be, and this, I maybe it was a crux behind, you know, I mean, that was the basis behind a very strong work ethic for a good long time while I was in the trades, but I'm not at that level anymore. And so, you know, and what my therapist had said to me is, hey, you know, you're 51. I don't know if anybody's told you, but you're 51. You know, this is normal. This is exactly where you need to be. And so there was, you know, and it's like I'm coming to terms with this at the same time she's saying it. And this leads me now into transitioning beyond that dark into accepting that this is where I need to be. God's given me the level of you know, challenge that I've asked for, and that, you know, and that I need to use to prepare myself for more.
Mm-hmm.
And this really kind of brings us to was it really a heart-wrenching decision? So the high cost of compassion, hard decisions for the greater good. Was it heart-wrenching? You didn't make it sound that way earlier today.
Well, so we've decided to rehome our little old man, Jack, our schnoodle, because it's just not safe for him here anymore. Our bigger lab has taken to attacking him, and we've had to keep them separated. Anyway, I found a good home for him, and he's actually leaving tomorrow. And I've accepted it. It was hard at first because there was the consideration of just maybe putting him down. He's 14, but he's still very active, and you know, dinner time, he's like psyched.
Just so you know, when I thought that maybe that's the route we go, I wasn't just like looking at, well, he's 14, let's put him down. You know, he had a stroke. We think. He sometimes walks funny,
Yeah,
and acts funny. So it's not like, you know, it's kind of like, well, I mean, what kind of quality of life does he really have at this point anyway?
well, yes and no. I mean, I think from that theoretical stroke, he recovered well. He doesn't go up and down the stairs anymore. Mostly because I think he's afraid that he's going to fall.
Yeah.
And he has a hard time jumping on the furniture, but he's old.
Yeah. It is kind of comical when he. I'm sorry. It's just the twisted side of me. It's like, I'll look at him try.
So anyway, I've accepted that that's the situation, and for his own safety, he has to go, and he'll be well taken care of. And
yeah.
So
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good home.
Yeah.
So you had to go out and update all of his vaccines today.
Yeah.
And now it's very real.
Yeah.
So now when we talk about you've accepted it, I mean, realistically, what does that mean?
Um,
What was Jack to you?
um, he was my little guy, he was, when we first got him, he was very lovable and snuggly and
With
wanted to kiss you all the time.
with you? Well, I mean with us, but he didn't get along with Sandy and
He didn't
Fenway.
get along with Sandy at first, but he and Fenway were barking buddies. They go outside and bark at stuff, and
That's true.
um, but he has slowed down a lot. And honestly, I don't think he's a fan of being cuddled anymore. He just wants to, lay down and chill.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I feel like we've been going through this for so long that finally having a decision and it being real and it being a good one is it.
So maybe it's because this is the better of the two decisions
Yeah.
that it's like, so tomorrow when we drive away, do you feel like there may be then it's going to hit you,
Probably. Yeah.
sort of like the first time we dropped Liam off at college?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be a little strange for a while too. I mean, having him around,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I don't know why so the notes are linking my journal entry this morning about my energy from last night.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but in relation to Jack, so I mean, how this encompasses into our the rest of our life, everything else that we're doing. I mean, this is more weight, right? All of this is, so that we take a minute and we really think about what it is to make the transformation into entrepreneur. Starts and ends with growth and personal growth, and the constant struggle to become better than we were, say, yesterday.
Right.
And one of the biggest forms of growing is struggle, and struggle is manifested in I just feel like it's not positioned right. Struggle is manifested in the biggest way in all of the weight that we carry on from various levels. So while we're struggling to grow ourselves and to become stronger and to become better and to strive for a level of greatness that we're being called for, and which, by the way, going back to the whole religious thing or spiritual thing, for me, yes, while God is not a singular entity in my mind, it's being called to do something is still very real, I believe. And so being called to do something and striving for that, and the growth that's involved in all of that, it very much has to do with every weight that we carry. So whether it's the business isn't going well, or we need figure out our finances, or in regards to the business, or figure out our finances on a personal level, or figure out just how we're going to get out of bed in the fucking morning. And that's a really big one. That's a really, really big one, because there's so many times where it's like things are just not going our way. And we need to push ourselves beyond that to find some level of, to grow.
Yeah.
And this includes things like, our dogs aren't getting along, and one of them's got to go.
Yeah.
And it's a really big emotional weight too, because I mean, nobody's coming to rescue them from us. And what else are we going to do? We're getting to a point where one of them's going to have to get put down. I mean, the first response when we opened up to the world that I saw was, just don't even stop. Just fucking call up something care, and have them come to the house and just put him down. This is the right thing to do because he's your dog and because you love him and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, wait a minute. That's a cop out. I mean, don't get me wrong. That came from a place of love, right? But this is it. It's like, well, I can't accept that that's the only thing we can do.
Right. And no vet's going to put down a healthy dog.
And well, but it's like, well, but we give them up to a shelter.
Well, yes.
And then they get put down.
Right.
So it's like, no matter what you do here, you lose.
Right.
But unless, and this is the growing moment, right? This is the teaching moment. Unless you sit down for a minute and you don't just walk out there with your heart, and you think really hard, really long and hard about what your options are, and you keep fighting, and you keep fighting, and you keep fighting, and you keep fighting.
Yeah.
And that's, and ultimately that's what we did, I mean, for so long we were hung up on the only thing we can do is remove the aggressor.
Right.
But, I woke up one day and said, that's not the right answer. That can't be the right answer. And I think that ultimately where we landed is a way better option.
Yeah. I'm kind of on the fence about that, because I'm still mad at Fenway for putting us in this situation to begin with.
He's a dog.
Yeah.
He's
I know.
A dog. He's not your best friend. I mean, he's your best friend, but he's not your best friend. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's not your sister. Your sister has the wherewithal to know what she's doing and be held accountable for it. How do you hold a dog accountable for their actions? They're dogs.
Yep.
So, and I understand, it's natural to be angry for, you did this, but he was just being him. He was just being a dog. So for him, he's like, yeah, I don't understand why you're angry. And he never will. He'll never understand that, because he doesn't think like you do.
Right.
So, ultimately, I think that, that's where our teaching moment is. That's where our growth is in saying, maybe you're on the fence that this was the right idea, but I promise you, this, compared to any other plan, is the only one that works.
Right.
And so to grow from the situation is to understand that where we were was just jump off the cliff. And we, instead of just allowing our emotions to push us off the cliff, we sat back and we worked at it. We worked it. We keep working the problem until the solution presents itself. And, if that isn't the biggest gift from God,
yeah,
right? Now you have the wisdom to say to yourself, if I acted in the moment with that anger, with that sadness, with that desperation, if I acted with any of those emotions, where would I be today?
Right.
But I didn't. I sat and I worked the problem, and I figured it out, and, or we figured it out, and you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that, that's, I think that ultimately it worked out really well.
Yeah.
we're way better people for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Way better people. So, in that being said, underwriting the dream, navigating a structural tension of growth, emotional roller coaster of the common capital loan. The business plan is perfect, but the credit underwriters are the hurdle.
Yes. So I'm pretty much done preparing everything for common capital. The business plan's done. My projections are done. Just everything. It just needs to be handed over to the underwriters and the loan officers to decide yay or nay.
Are you worth the risk?
Exactly. And I think I have a solid business plan. I think this.
You should direct them to the podcast, by the way.
This organization doesn't just look at your credit score. It looks at your character, what your business is about, what your mission statement is, and your vision.
That's why I said I think you'd be good to have them watch the podcast. You really want them to,
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, because we talk about all these things. I think the number one thing, if it's based on the merit instead of the history, right? Then what's the number one thing that they're going to look for? Your history is of somebody that's not growing. But what are you doing right now? You're growing.
Right.
You're making massive leaps and bounds to improve yourself, to step up into this position that you never thought you would do before. And you're learning the hard way. You need to, all the things you need to do to become that person that they want to give their money to.
Right.
So, yeah, just say, hey, look, if you got 2 hours or 3, can I send you a link to our podcast? It's a shameless plug.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it opens a window, right?
Right.
Or opens,
Yep.
into who you are. So who are you do you really care? You really want to know who you're investing in? Check out the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Do what you want with that. But at any rate, so now how is it that how do you stay grounded when your paperwork or your past doesn't match your vision? Preparing for the worst while hoping for the best as a tactical business strategy. Do you understand? Do you know? I mean, is that something you're preparing yourself for?
Yeah.
What? So, just for shits and ha-has, what happens if they say no?
Well,
we work the problem.
Pretty much.
Yeah. We don't
figure out the next step.
The number one thing. What I've heard recently a bit. Don't have a plan B.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
You come up with a plan and you work that plan until you're dead, or it succeeds, whichever comes first. So if they say no, then you go back and you say, well, listen, I think we need to keep talking about this. or you look at some other avenue.
Right.
We still haven't exhausted our entire, the entire universe of grants.
I did apply for a grant. So
there you go. And so the plan A, which is the business, is just working these problems.
Right.
And so you're moving along. I think you're doing fantastic. And actually, and maybe this is faith-based itself, but I mean, I've noticed a difference in you this past week. You seem a lot more positive about the direction you're headed in. You haven't come to me with any doubts. Of course, you do still hold back a lot of stuff from me.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine. You don't have to tell me everything, but I mean, as partners, right? You can lean on me. I don't always, maybe I'm not always as receptive as I could be. I don't know. I don't know if that's the issue or not, um, but certainly, I'll have advice for you. I know one thing from my perspective: when you're really suffering from the doubt and the fear, you can get yourself into a mode where you're like, I don't want to hear a solution.
That is true. Sometimes I just want to be left alone.
Yeah, just let me wallow in this fucking misery for a while. Yeah, I can see that. That's that's a tough one. That's because it's not good.
Right.
You really shouldn't wallow in it.
Yeah.
You need, again, it's a matter of, it's like that lesson with Jack and Fenway. You presented a problem. Are you going to react with it, but with your emotions, or are you going to sit down and do the work? And wallowing is reacting with emotion. It's like, well, it's never going to work. And that's my biggest hurdle, and how this whole thing, my side, ties into it, because I've been on a freaking sleep cycle from hell, in quotes. I'm trying to be the person. I'm trying to be a new person while the old life still demands payment for the truck and the house. And realistically, financially, I mean, I've been carrying a heavy load here. So when I say that financially, what I really mean is psychologically, the financial weight is very big, is very heavy. And then and of course the need, right? The need to do it. I unrealistic expectations on my, on doing it, and on everything else I'm doing, in that old life, that person that just wants to freaking, I'm just going to stare at the TV for the next 6 hours, or I want to go out and have a bunch of drinks, and it's like, what can I do to run away from this problem? And I mean, that's the old life. And it's like, now it's coming to terms with, well, you can't do that. And so you're wallowing in this misery. You can't treat it the same way you used to. What are you doing? Where does this go? How does this help? It doesn't. None of it. It's like, get off your fucking ass and do the work. And that's a really tough thing to go through too, because it's like, well, this sleep schedule from hell for me, in terms of this past week, in the past couple of weeks, it's been driving me into the fucking ground. I can't get my sleep schedule on track. I come home, I'm exhausted, I sleep for 15 to 30 minutes, and then I'm wide the fuck awake, and I can't sleep for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I end up getting 2 to 3 hours. And, so we decided to change our schedule for the morning. That didn't really, that's, I think, what we got up one day.
Yeah.
The rest of the week, but it was a short week. So not bad for our first week of changing. It's all right. It's not like you just freaking, your phone.
Oh, my battery's low.
Oh. No, I don't have one available. I was going to unplug it, but never mind. At any rate, so I, you can turn that off. I'll run this the rest of the way, but, that ties in with the conversation I had with my therapist too, is, I'm 51. I'm also I've got a shit sleep schedule. And I mean, my body, I'm not 22 anymore. I can't go with only 3 hours of sleep every night, and while this new schedule is promising to be help with that, it's now I have to get used to that, of course, a short week doesn't really help you jump right back and right into a whole new process.
Right.
So now I've got to, we're going to see how this works out over this next week, and hopefully that helps out. But I'll tell you what, poor sleep, right? Poor attitude. And poor sleep leads to poor attitude. And any little difficulty that comes along and you find yourself sitting right there in the midst of that fucking wallowing. And you just, and it's like you can't break free of it because your sleep's getting worse. Your attitude's getting worse. Everything is just, and the problems now are going to get bigger. And it's like Tony Robbins says, your life is what you choose to focus on. When you're wallowing, what are you focusing on? Everything is going wrong.
Right.
So everything's just going to keep going wrong, and it's like, trying to work on a project, a physical project, trying to work on a physical project and you're frustrated. You're only going to have a harder time doing it, and it's just going to keep getting harder and harder and harder. And so, it's, it's all part of it, right? It's all part of the learning process. I think this is, my new, speaking of getting old, my new, my new philosophy now on what I should be working on is developing a system, right? And this is my whole new life. Everything's all about systems. Developing a system in which when I start to feel pulled this way, or when I have trouble sleeping, two different things, but when have a system in place, how to fucking treat this. My biggest thing is when I start to slip into this fucking mode where I think that nothing's going to work, I need a system in place that's going to tell me, okay, so now, because, when you're wallowing, the last thing you want to hear or read or whatever is, but look at your wins. Look how far you've come.
Yeah.
All you're thinking about is tomorrow and how tomorrow doesn't look good. You don't want to know about the fucking 10 things that went right today and the 10 things that went right yesterday. You don't care about that because all you can think about is, but I need tomorrow to work and it's not looking good. That's not fucking helpful, right? So we choose instead to look at our wins. This is the focus thing that Tony Robbins talks about. We choose to focus on our wins, and and now we're not focusing on what's going to happen, what will happen tomorrow. And now we can, you know what I mean? You don't have to focus on tomorrow. Focusing on tomorrow doesn't do you any fucking good. Being prepared for tomorrow is okay, but that's not focusing on tomorrow.
Right.
That's just saying, I know what I can do. I know what I would like to do. And then put that aside. And, develop, some good systems that we really should start working on is brain dumps at the end of the day. So brain dump, for anybody not aware, but a brain dump is you sit down, you write down, so at the beginning of the day, you have some goals for the day, the things that you should accomplish. Whatever you don't accomplish, write them down. Get them out of your head. In addition to getting rid that out of your head, what's your number one concern from the day? Write that down. What's your number one win from the day? Write the top 5 wins from the day. Write that down. What are you most grateful for? Write that down. Get all of it written down on a piece of paper. And, and there's actual frameworks designed very specifically for all this stuff. And doing all this before you go to bed now gets the weight of tomorrow off your fucking shoulders. You don't need to worry about it anymore. in credit to my old boss Tim. He used to tell me, he's like, he says, at the beginning of every day, you need a legal pad. You write down the top 3, top 4, whatever top things you need to get done today. Write them down on a piece of paper. And then systematically work through, cross them out, throw the paper out at the end of the day, and write down whatever you didn't do. And then tomorrow, revisit that. And the whole idea there, that was all because I'm horrible with time management. This now creates a better, and I've heard too, time management's a myth, but this is a way to work on creating better systems in order to be more productive in your life. And it's worth investigating, but it's not just worth investigating for being productive. It's about getting your mind right.
Right.
And so that's, some things that can be worked on. Now, the last thing, the weathering, building roots that can handle the storm. Tree metaphor, yes. So, after my dark night, and the subsequent day or two that followed, a lot of my back and forth of Mind Sarah uses the personality of a Taoist monk, right? So everything comes back from the Tao Te Ching, and it's almost always in the form of rivers and water, and how water flows and so on and so forth. Well, I woke up after having weathered through the storm and everything, and my very specific. And actually, I wonder if I could bring that up. This is the one. Jack's going to leave. Fenway's going to be free. Jack's going to leave. The summary, for some reason, mixed up the names. But at any rate, I'm an authority in my space. I've written a solid book on scaling business and providing proper training for the future of electrical contracting. Blah blah blah. I don't see. Actually, I don't see where it is, but I basically, I had, I just described myself as, when a storm rolls through, I mean, even in a lot of cases, you ever seen a tornado go through an area or whatever? Some trees are still standing while freaking giant structures are gone. And and so I really I painted this picture that I'm a great big oak, and so here's the thing, and maybe this is how we can wrap up this episode. Where are my show notes? And God. So what I wrote was, God made me strong enough to weather storms, even as branches are ripped away. And, well, I mean, the big thing is, how do we keep our root system intact as we grow older? But, I mean, if you ever pay attention to a tree, as it grows older, branches will fall away.
Yeah.
Storms will take them away. Portions of the tree will just naturally fall off. Leaves at the end of every summer or into every fall, leaves will fall off. It's the shedding of the skin, so to speak. And it's, and yet the trunk continues to grow stronger with age and continues to get bigger. And, and I mean, there are extenuating circumstances that can fell a tree, naturally, I mean. But in, when we think about ourselves historically, okay, we've made it. there hasn't been one fucking thing that's happened in our lives that we haven't made it through.
Right.
We've survived. We continue to stand through whatever storms have come our way. And this is, and if you're listening or you're watching, or you yourself or me, whenever we enter into these dark moments of doubt, of overall stress, everything is beating down our door and freaking making us feel like it's just, why? I just can't continue. Why? You know what? You survived. You've been surviving. You've made it this far.
Right.
There's no stopping. You don't stop until, you don't get to decide that. That's not, you just can't. You decide that you want to give up so bad that it's all over and that's it. Okay. You know what? You're not that strong.
Yeah.
But think about it. There have been moments in the past where you've sat and gone, I can't do it anymore. And here you are. You're still doing it.
Yeah.
So, the for you is the notes say, the bigger thread facing the uncertainty of the loan, baptism, and LB's independence simultaneously. I don't know. I think we kind of covered all of that, really. Yeah. We're weathering the storm. We've been weathering the storm. And, to some degree, even to some degree beyond the tree, we grow stronger with each storm. While the body might be breaking down, the spirit continues to grow. And I honest to God believe that, you and I are 10 times bigger than we were a week ago.
Yeah.
We're 100 times bigger than we were a year ago. And we're only going to get better. And it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. These are just the branches falling away.
Right.
So with that said, if there's nothing more that you'd like to share and talk about this week.
No, I think we covered it.
We pretty much hit it all.
Yeah.
So for the audience, I do this every week at the end of every show. I'm going to do it again. Nobody ever gets to hear this because I don't think people listen to the whole show. But, except for Dave. Why are you giving me that look?
What look?
Oh, all right. But at any rate, like, comment, share, help this get out there. I'm certain that even if none of this is helpful for you, seeing what somebody's going through in order to better their lives and to grow and to become successful, and all of this stuff, even if this isn't helpful for you, by commenting, liking, sharing, this gets out there. There is somebody out there that I'm sure, there is a benefit in numbers in seeing that somebody else is going through this as much as we are, or has gone through it, or is about to go through it. Knowing that somebody else has dealt with the same situation that you yourself are going through is a massive benefit. If you're considering at all, all the hype that's been given to mental health over the last few years, then this is definitely your call to action. Like, comment, share. People need to see other people are going through it too. You're not alone.
Right.
And with all of that said, if you made it this far through the episode, or even if you just catch bits and pieces and thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here with us every week. If it's, now say 2032 and you're just coming to this episode for the first time, thank you for checking out our history. And, and we hope that you continue to join us every week because, knowing that this is going to be helpful for somebody else somewhere down the line, this fuels us to want to keep doing it. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.